Now that you understand how to draw confluence, I want to give you two specific ways that you can use confluence immediately. And if you want to explore this a little bit further, I encourage you to watch the Total Fibonacci Trading program. But for right now, let's just limit it to two really great uses for confluence zone. First of all, confluence can help you establish a quicker entry following a retracement. So you remember back to our first class, we talked about the green and the red box, and well, I still think those are a great tool to be getting in and out of trades. You can use confluence to speed this process up a little bit quicker. And I want to go back to the Apple example that we did in the last video. We worked really hard to get that confluence zone at 63.63. If it's been a little while since you watched that video, maybe just brush up on that real quickly before we go into this example here. But we worked really hard to identify the framework of Apple. And we said 63.63 is a point where, and I'll say it this way, something is going to happen. We think it's probably going to be resistance and be a bearish run, but I certainly don't want to require that of Apple right now. I don't want to get unfairly biased, we might say. So let's see how it played out. We came right on up to 63.63, and we found resistance. We found a pretty nice bounce off from resistance, and with confluence, I would have some confidence in getting into a bearish trade right here on Apple because it's fitting the framework. And I don't have to wait for the red box to be breached and to figure out where we should not be trading and should be trading and all that because we know the framework. And right now, Apple is fitting within our framework. And so there's no reason to believe that this isn't going to be successful. And of course, Apple goes on and has a really nice run, and we're pretty profitable in the trade. A second way that you can use confluence is actually if there's a disregard for it. And so that's why I chose my words carefully a second ago. I didn't want to say we're going to find support at confluence because if we didn't find, I said support, I meant resistance. If we don't find resistance in this Apple example, it's almost more beneficial to us because it tells us the framework is changing. And when we get framework changes, volatile, exciting things typically happen. It can be really, really profitable for us. So let's come back here to Apple. We tested confluence again, but this time it broke. Resistance did not hold, and Apple began. And so this too is an opportunity. When confluence breaks down, you have an opportunity to enter a counter trend trade here because there's a new framework setting up. But you, as the wise Fibonacci analyst, have discovered this change in framework long before your support and resistance friends are going to see it. And so, of course, Apple continued on for a year and a half and beyond in its bullish trend once this framework switched over. So especially when you start looking at longer-term Fibonacci confluence zones and you find a Fibonacci confluence break, those are tremendous opportunities. It's exactly what happened in 2008 and how we got into that bearish market, and it's exactly what happened here in this Apple trade and how you could have jumped on that and been first man to that party. So there's a couple ways that you can use confluence zone, either if it's respected or if it's broken, to get into trades. Now, this particular screen brings up an interesting question that I often ask students, which is, can confluence, which we might confuse or even label as support and resistance, can confluence as old resistance become new support? And the answer is emphatically no. A confluence zone acting as support cannot become resistance. Once the zone is broken, it is no longer a target. It's also true for zones acting as resistance. And let's ask ourselves why. Well, if stock XYZ is trading bearish, and we're trying to find a confluence zone right here. Let's do it in orange to stay true to our color scheme. Well, it's red. There we go, orange. What would you be measuring to find that confluence zone? Well, because you're all Fibonacci ninjas, you, of course, have said that you would be measuring those ranges, and you would be right. We would be measuring each of those peaks and finding where our confluence zone is going to be established. And by the way, for my Fibonacci OCD friends, you like how my stars are all Fibonacci numbers for the points on the stars, 5, 8, and 13, I think it was. Just some Fibonacci humor for my sons of Bonaccis out there, sons and daughters of Bonacci. Anyway, back to our confluence zone. So we've measured the peaks on the left-hand side to find that support zone. But what if this thing breaks down? Okay, so we broke through Confluence. We have an opportunity to get into a bearish trade here, right? Because Confluence broke down, and so we're thinking about bearish. What would we be measuring if we wanted to identify a confluence zone? There's orange. I gave you the answer. What would we want to be identifying if we were looking for a confluence zone in this neck of the woods? And of course, it's circled in red here. We would be measuring the peaks on the right-hand side, right here, that we circled in red already. So they're different measurements, and you've got to be very, very careful that you don't apply support and resistance rules to confluence. Once the confluence zone is broken, you have to go back to the woodshed, go back to work, as my music teachers used to tell me, and identify what the new confluence zones are going to be. So let's go ahead and jump over to Trade Navigator and do some of these examples. We'll do a confluence example. You can see how I draw it out, and then in your homework, you're going to be going and doing some confluence examples yourself. So let's head on over to Trade Navigator and take a look.